What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Keep Growing, the spot where resilience meets style. We're here to help young men like you walk through life with confidence, intention, and a plan for success. From life tips to fresh kicks, we've got the tools and inspiration to help you not just survive, but thrive. From where you are to where you're going, let's keep growing.
Back, dude. Nice to see you.
Likewise, man. Absolutely.
And, in these last few weeks, we've done a little bit of thinking, a little bit of growing in our own separate ways, but most importantly, just trying to figure out, what BHD and what this Keep Growing show needs to elevate to. So there are a few things that are coming, your way in this case, and that we're going to start as individuals, me and Julian, and just bring better content, bring better flow, bring better conversation. So that way we're not only elevating, your lifestyle, but we're also elevating ours and holding ourselves to, a different standard than what most people do. So first and foremost, bro, I just want to ask you the question of, what's one thing you're grateful for? I know it's been a while since we've, had a conversation, but what's something in your life that you've been grateful for, in the last few weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that resonates with me often. It's just good health.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that's something that we take for granted. But, just being able to wake up, being able to work out, being able to work, just being able to do things that we do seamlessly, that's always a blessing.
Dude,
So that's something that I try not to ever take for granted. Mm-hmm. It's just being like, oh, I'll get to that next week. Well, I'll get to that tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I'll get to that in 3 days. Now, like really being present and having good health. But really, I'll say that linear to it, just being present too, being thankful for being able to just be in the present for a lot of things. And I think just with life and just so many things that go on, we can often look to the future. And it's actually, I don't want to get too elaborate on. I was reading a book I just finished. It's called The Courage to Be Disliked.
I like
and
that.
It talks about and it talks about how we often think about the past and we think about the present, the past and the future, but those things don't really exist. Like they're like the past doesn't matter anymore, and the present. In the future, we don't know what's to come with that. You know what I mean? So of course we have to work and be diligent, but it's about being present, and that's something that really resonates with me. So
I love that, dude. And what you're talking about right now in this case, appreciating your health. That's one thing that I struggled with these last couple of weeks. I hurt my back. So I wasn't able to be in the gym for like 4 days, dude. And it really put me in a perspective of like, dude, what are you outside of like having, a strong looking body or like feeling good as a person? And I really had to like dig deep and understand like, okay, honestly, this last month I've been going to the gym. I've just really been going through the motions. Like I haven't really been paying attention to form. I'm just going because I don't want to lose my body in the gains that I've started to grow.
Absolutely.
So in those 4 days, it really held me accountable to like, dude, when you go to the gym, it's a privilege.
Absolutely.
Like, it really is a privilege to be in there and, working out, hitting legs, hitting arms, because there's some people that don't get to do that at the full capacity.
Absolutely.
And I know we've had a conversation about it where I saw this one dude and he was, I think in a wheelchair, or he didn't have a leg, and this dude was just getting after it, man. He was sweating. He was, really into his workout. And I feel like in that moment, it really put me into that mindset of like, okay, one, when I'm in the gym, what am I thinking about? Two, am I appreciating every little thing from the start that I, warm up to the end of my, finish, whether it's cardio, whether it's, my come down when I need to stretch. So this last week I've been going and I've been very like intentional about the things that I'm doing. Like when I'm stretching, I'm like, okay, I need to make sure I'm, stretching my back out a little bit more. I need to make sure I'm not young anymore.
For sure.
So it's really,
you still are young. You still are youthful. You're just
youthful,
getting older.
exactly. There you go.
Youthful.
That's a great point. So I definitely have to hold myself to that next standard of like, all right, bro, when you get there, it's not just go after it. It's warm up, make sure you're taking these steps to make sure you have a good workout, or else it's going to hit you, and it's going to hit you hard. So
that's very true.
I do enjoy the fact that you brought that up, because I think it can tie a lot into intentionality and, what we're doing in our day to day, into the topic that we're talking about today.
Absolutely.
And I will mention, and I'll be transparent, that Julian and I, before we got into this new setting, we had this conversation about people pleasing. And I will be, the first to admit, bro, that my mind wasn't there, that conversation. Like it wasn't all there. And I think the crazy part is you had some great topics to go about. But just going over the whole show, I was like, this isn't the best work that I feel like we could produce. So I will admit this is our take two, but we're going to get into the conversation of people pleasing. And, how people pleasing not only can, it can be detrimental to yourself, but it can be detrimental and manipulative towards the people that you care about, because we always talk about, being nice and how we grow up in a society of a nice culture. And in reality, after reading some books and going over a few podcasts, I've learned that being nice can be somewhat manipulative to the people that you so-called care about. So we'll get into the first conversation, which is the game changer segment. And the thing that I want to talk about right now is, what would you say is the biggest, in your opinion, is the biggest downfall for a yes man? I feel like a yes man is a perfect conversation to get this going, because it's a topical thing that people go about on social media, where it's like, I just want a yes man, whether it's a woman, whether it's a job. Like, I just want someone that's always going to be able to do the work, anything that I throw at them, and do it. So what would you say is the biggest downfall of a yes man?
For sure. Would you say, in regards to the question, the person who's the recipient or the actual yes man?
The person who is a yes man, like, what would you say is their biggest downfall as being in that type of role, as always being looked at as someone as that doesn't set the boundary, or isn't able to say no?
Yeah, I think somebody who is, in a sense of like that, how you're explaining the yes man. Well, I mean, I would say, for one, there's really probably a lack of knowledge of self. And everybody's on their own personal journey, so some people might be further than others. But I think there might be just a sense of lack of knowledge of self, just in regards to, if it's always just, whether that's people pleasing or heeding to other people, or just yes, however that goes. I mean, there's going to eventually be a burnout. Yeah. Because eventually, I mean, you just can't be, everything can't be yes. Everything can't be about pleasing. And again, within this book, but it's probably one of the best books that I've read. This book is called The Courage to Be Disliked. And it's like, the reality is, if you are disliked, that's a good thing.
That is a good thing.
That's a good thing.
That means you're being your true self.
And you have standards and morals and values.
That you live by.
Because if everything is yes and everybody likes you now, of course, that's within realms and in a sense of, if somebody's doing something that makes people dislike them, that's one thing. But if you have standards, if you have principles and morals, and you move a certain way, and if that comes with no's, or I don't do that, I don't indulge in that, I don't engage in that, and somebody doesn't like you for that, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And you should honestly want people to, like, if everybody likes you, that's a problem. Now, if you're a likable person, and if people are like, that's a genuine guy, that's a genuine man, that's a good man, of course, that's a great thing. But if people are just, oh yeah, I like him, well, it's like, well, does he not have any morals or values or standards? Because why isn't there somebody that's like, nah, I don't really like him. I don't really like that he does that. Well, I don't like that he operates this way. Or people who understand it will understand it. But I just say that to say, I think, for one, there's a burnout, and there's just a lack of knowledge of self, which is fine, because everybody's on their own plight and on their own journey. And that person could obtain that peace in their journey. But I think for somebody who's just a yes man, it's just, they might not be where they ultimately can be.
I think, nowadays too, everyone has this, huge umbrella of opinions that can be somewhat contradicting, and I'll start with myself, but like, there's so many things that you can agree with but disagree with at the same time, because we're just fed by social opinions day to day, that I think it's impossible for anyone to like everything about someone's and their beliefs. So I think one thing that you talked about that really hit a nerve for me was the fact that walking in that path, for a fact that there are going to be people that just completely disagree with you.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a scary thing for people that go through it. And I think this is a great topic, because everyone does it. Regardless if you say you can admit the fact that, like, oh no, I'd never do that. But I think subconsciously we've talked about this. You tend to do things around a certain group of people that you don't even see unless you have a homie right next to you, and it's just like, hey, bro, why'd you act like that? Or you get in front of somebody that's your boss, or like somewhat of a higher standard, and you chest up a little bit, or you say something differently. And I think all of that goes into the people pleasing topic or subject. It's just in a different form. Absolutely. So it's not always the words that you're saying or the things that you're walking by, but it's also the way you're carrying yourself around different people.
Absolutely.
And that's one area that I feel like as people that are vulnerable in that state, the podcast that I was watching earlier today, because I really wanted to just understand from these experts on why people do that, in this case why I was doing that in college or in high school. And it comes from a state of like always wanting to, in a sports mindset, of always wanting to please your coach. Sports is a very egotistical thing, because you have a coach, you have someone that you have to please in order to get on the starting five or to get into that lineup. And sometimes that can be taken overboard to where, are the work that you're putting in actually because you love the game, or is it because you want coach to see that you're putting in the work so he can put you in.
Absolutely.
So there's a fine line between both of it, both things. But that really hit a nerve for me because I'm like, dang, man. Like, I know there's a few times that I was out there where I was just like, I just want coach to know that I'm working hard so that way I can hit the lineup. Not to say that I didn't love the game, but it's just human. It's human nature, you know?
Yeah, and I think, man, I'm going to refer to this book again because I think it's a powerful book.
Yeah.
You know, and it talks about task. And this was almost like when we spoke about the 7 spiritual laws of success.
Yeah.
You know, that the chapter of detachment, it's a specific section in this book, and it speaks about task. And what I mean by that is, and it refers to what you're saying, it speaks to, in the sense of oftentimes we do things, like, let's say, for example, you have an outfit on, you're fresh right now.
Right, yeah.
Let's say if somebody goes
Thank
out.
you.
No, absolutely, yeah,
right,
no, for sure, love. But let's say you go out or somebody goes out and they're concerned about how people are going to be receptive to their outfit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When we think about it, when we break that down, that's not your task to take on mindset of whatever anybody feels about what you have going on. But I just use that as an example.
Right.
But people do that in so many different facets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In regards to just relationships, what they say to people, you know, how they're received, how they dress, if they're switching their look, whatever it is, they're thinking like, well, how are people going to interpret how I look? Or how are people going to like think about my new look or my new spot? Or you know what I mean? And it's like when it really boils down to it, it's not your task to try to figure out why somebody thinks what they think. And I think that alleviates a lot of things. That alleviates pretty much anybody going into something thinking, oh, I need to people please, or what is this person going to think about me doing this or that? It's not your task to worry about that.
Right.
I think the only thing one should think about is being honorable in the sense of moving righteously, moving correct, being genuine, being a good, upstanding person, having principles, morals, and those things. And after that, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks. Because when you're moving correctly, you know you're moving correctly. So if somebody is like, I don't like fobs, you could be like, I don't care that you don't like
and
it.
it's a conviction of like, that's fine. I can accept that because you put in your 100% effort to be your truest self.
Exactly.
And
I did nothing to you.
It did nothing.
So if you feel that way about me, I'm sorry, if you feel that way about me, that's fine. And you can walk and resonate in the fact that you did nothing to that person.
No,
and that
true.
again ties in the fact with it's okay when people dislike you, but for the sake of task, like it's not our task to try to figure out why people think the way they do about us, why they feel the way they feel. You know, it's not for us to think that, but people take on that onus for themselves, and then that affects how they think, how they move, what they do. And it's like, nah, to free yourself, it's like, that's how I operate.
It's
like,
freeing.
I don't care what you think, because I know I want to move as genuine and in a good spirited, calm, relaxed, just genuine way.
Yeah.
So if somebody doesn't like me, I genuinely don't care. And it's still much love. I don't care.
And that's the way you got to move. And it's crazy because that's exactly what these guys were talking about. Dude, there's two guys, and they're talking about more specifically in the realm of why guys people please to get certain women or to go after the woman. And everything they talked about wasn't necessarily tied to just a relationship. It's tied to like a deep-rooted thing of it being, you know, starting from a young age. There's a stem for it. But I think, you know, the one point that you talked about that they were spot on about is people think people-pleasing is manipulative towards just the other party. It's not just towards the other party. It's majority or majorly targeted towards themselves, that person trying to please them because of the fact that they're so scared of being their truest self that they would rather lead with agreeing with certain things rather than saying what they truly believe because they're afraid of conflict. And it all comes down to conflict resolution and, you know, conflict management. And a lot of these people, which I will be the first to admit, like, I don't like conflict, bro. Like, I'm the type of guy where it's just like, I'm not going to agree and like lay down for certain things, but I just won't let it get to a rise to where it's taking up too much of my energy.
For sure. That's good. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. But again, there's like a fine line with everything. So these people that are going through that, or in this case, you know, me in college when I was going through this, it was way more of a dang, man, I just want to say the right thing so that way there's no fear of me not being liked, because I know I'm a good person. For sure. You know, or I think I'm a good person. I just want them to think that I'm a good person because that's validating. For sure. And the way they talked about it was so nice, bro, because they just go and give specific examples that are tied to nothing about manipulation, to what we think manipulation is in nowadays society, which is, you know, to be toxic, to hurt somebody, intentionally do something to get their own, you know, thing, which that is manipulating. But on the flip side of it, internally, these people are manipulating who they are as people because they just are scared to be themselves. Yeah. And that's got to be a sad way to live majority of the time, because I know I've had those moments, but like not my day to day, dude. Like that's got to be tough.
Yeah, man. I think again, it all just boils down to knowledge of self.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And when you really, really start figuring out who you are, and just how you operate, and just on a daily, like you mentioned, like certain things you just won't, just stop caring about, truthfully, because you know you're moving intentionally.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it comes down to having, you know, the people around you, you know, I would say the question for, if I was listening to this, it'd be like, okay, well then how do I get out of that mindset, or how do I get out of that way of just trying to please people? And whether you admit it, you know, vocally or internally, I think that's the first step, is to admit it. The second thing I would recommend, which you gotta have a foundation of people that are good people surrounded around you to put you in check. Yeah. Because if you don't, dude, you cannot walk this life alone by yourself.
For sure.
We've talked about it so many times with, you know, trying to do things on your own and not being held accountable by someone else that's, you know, maybe in a different step of their journey, and, you know, a little bit higher of a step. So I would say, like, having that group of people, because I'm sure you've had it in times where you've had boys who are just like, or you've checked other guys, or you checked your friends, like, bro, why are you doing that? Like, where is that coming from? Like, how are you feeling right now?
Yeah, I think even before that, which you said, those are two great points. I think having being self-analytical is very important too.
Okay. Yeah, go deeper in that.
Self-analysis. And I mean, and just in a sense of like, and again, that goes into knowledge of self as well.
Yeah.
But that's just in a sense of like really reflecting on oneself and being like, okay, what's making me do that? Or why am I operating like that? And I get everybody is not going to necessarily put a mirror to themselves. You have to want to seek bettering yourself to even do that. So that's the first step, is even wanting to better yourself. But once you do that, you can start doing things like being like, well, what's making me do that? Or why did I do that? Yeah. Or I noticed I did this in this situation, and I felt like I wanted to do this, but I did that. And I think if people are real with themselves or internally, that can really like shift. Yeah. Because I mean, I like to think of things from a self-reliant standpoint, you know, and if we lean to other people for things, which is fine too, in certain regards, but in certain cases, there's no need for other people to like have an analysis on ourselves. We can do a lot of like soul searching, and we can be reflective within internally first, and then also on the contrary, somebody can see like, hey, I see you've been working on yourself, man. I see you've been, because when you have it emanates, it shows. And I think first and foremost, yes, we should have people around us who can be like, hey, check it out. Why'd you do that in this situation, or what's up with that? But if we first, again, if we're in a gym by ourselves first, we don't necessarily need somebody else to be. Somebody else can come in the gym with us and work out, but we're already in the gym. And I use that in a sense of just being self-reflective, self-reliant, and then also in that sense, you know, when you do that, I mean, I just like to be from a very, like I use the example, man, just being in the jungle by yourself. Yeah. In that situation,
you got to put yourself in it to understand and to know what works and what doesn't work.
Exactly.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah, and I think first and foremost, and you made two great points, but to also add to that, I think being self-reliant first in the sense of looking within, that's essential for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's so easy nowadays too to really isolate yourself with you know, everything that happened with COVID and people that are still working from home. I think, you know, putting yourself in the jungle, like you said, is probably the biggest one that you would have to do for yourself first. And it's as simple as stepping into the gym, dude. I think that's a perfect thing, or going into a large public crowd, which you can do anywhere, and really putting yourself open to conversations. Not to say you have to go walk up to every average Joe and talk to them, but just really putting yourself in those moments of like, if someone does come talk to you and, you know, hey bro, I like your shoes, like where'd you get them, or how much were your shoes?
Exactly.
Like, it gives you the ability to make that decision in my head of like, okay, should I lie to him and, you know, big myself up and say they're like $200, or should I just say like, bro, I got them at Marshall's, or $40, like. And I think that's the easiest way for guys to really like explain this process or the topic to people, is like, as a man, there are only a few things that I feel like we get really like egotistical about, and it comes down to like, you know, how much money you make, you know, how big you are and how strong you are, and how masculine you can be compared to another guy. Like, I would say those are the big three that we struggle with. So, yeah, dude, I think that's a perfect point to start off with first, because you'll come across people, and I don't think for this, you don't have to always have somebody that is necessarily your friend. I think what would be even better is somebody that understands and has done a self-analysis of who they are, because they'll be able to call it off right off the bat of like, hey, what's wrong? Like, you good? Stuttering, or just like looking around, not really looking you eye to eye. Like, you could tell those things from somebody that's not necessarily feeling comfortable with who they are as a person.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think that's what it boils down to. Not to reiterate the same thing.
No, for sure.
Yeah. to have a self-analysis, and then also, like you said, to have a core group of people around you that can also hold you accountable to essential things. Those are probably the only two, truthfully, in a sense, being able to look within and then having people around you that can hold you accountable. After that, there's nothing really like that's you maxed out at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So then I would say for the next topic that we're going to go into, when it comes to this people pleasing, what are, other than the tips that we did offer them, like, how would you move around something like that in terms of, coming across a homie that's doing that specific thing, whether they're just, saying yes or being a people pleaser in a physical situation or a public situation? Mm-hmm. How would you recommend for them to really attack that on their own journey in a simple process?
That's a really good question. I would say, like, in that situation, when that person gets by themselves, mm-hmm. like, because
I like that.
How do you feel when you get
by
back by yourself
mm-hmm.
after you've done people pleasing things?
Yes.
Whether you said yes to just maybe, like, let's say you're going out with your boys or whomever, mm-hmm. and everybody's like, oh, you're gonna drive, and then you're like, oh, all right, I'll drive, but you didn't want to drive, but you just heated to driving, mm-hmm. instead of being like, hey, look, I don't feel like driving today. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or I had a long week or whatever it is. And maybe just not even explaining yourself, being like, hey, look, I just don't want to drive. Yeah. Somebody else, you know what I mean? And just standing on what you want. I think when you get back into a space of being reclusive or by yourself, if you've done the people pleasing, then you get back, and let's say you're driving back to your crib by yourself. Now you're thinking like, man, I didn't even want to drive.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I didn't want to drive tonight, but something made, like, everybody, and it's like, no, you have to stand, again, as men, we're speaking mm-hmm. as men.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, it's okay for there to be, like, a rebuttal or a refute, or for somebody, or, you know what I mean? Like, not even conflict, but just to be like, I don't want to do that.
That's how it should be.
It should be. Uh-huh. And other people who understand, other men will also understand that. It'll be understood. Now, if somebody wants to manipulate the situation or, take advantage of, now that's when other things come into play, and that's another conversation. But if it's something that you just genuinely don't want to do, think about how you feel when you're by yourself, and then also think about when you're by yourself and you also stood your ground, you stood 10 toes, and you were like, I'm proud of myself.
Yeah.
Think about how you feel. That will combat, you know what I mean, constantly people pleasing, because everybody has to be everybody's real with themselves.
Even in the moments that you can't even see, and I think that's a perfect thing, because there are times where I'm like, why did I say that? Or like, could I have said that a little bit differently? Or anytime I have a conversation and I feel like it was like a 50-50 thing, like there's 50-50 things that you say to people, and it's just like, man, did that come off a little stern? Or like, did that, maybe that came off the wrong way? Like, I think everyone has those conversations in their head, but I would say rely off of those moments, because your subconscious isn't going to lie to you on how you genuinely felt about giving that answer. And sometimes you do make a mistake, right? Like sometimes we do, lead a little bit too much with our ego, or we just completely say something wrong, and you just got to admit it, down the road, or just to yourself. Sometimes that's the only way you can do it to move on. But I would genuinely say, for guys that are going through that and just want to be able to catch it fast in the moment, have that conversation. Like once it hits you, just like let it sit with yourself. And if you still have that opportunity to go up to your boys and be like, bro, honestly, I just don't want to drive. Like, if we're gonna be drinking, and and I know how we drink, I would rather just take an Uber, bro. Absolutely. And I'll pitch in X amount of dollars for sure. So I think that's a healthy way to really just be in the moment, on top of understanding your true self and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, no, you're on point, man. I think just thinking back to when you're by yourself, how do you feel? That will combat everything.
Yeah. So would you disagree or agree that when you are people pleasing, you attract the opposite of the people that you're wanting to attract and the situations? Mm-hmm. So like, say you have like somebody, I think there was a perfect example we had a conversation on. You had or you knew somebody that made the comment of like, man, the dating here in the US is just not it. And you're like, well, have you ever traveled? And it's like, well, no, like that's, so in that situation, like you have a dude who's just like, he has the right goals, the mindset of like, I want this, this, and this. But he's always saying yes and being a people pleaser. Yeah. Do you think he would attract just the complete opposite of those types of environments and those types of people that, have high success and are very individualistic?
That's a great point. That's a great question. I think in one facet it can attract the adverse. Yeah. I think it could create stagnation as well. Like just become stagnant. In the sense of there's no moving forward. I mean, I think in the sense of anybody who's doing the opposite of people pleasing, they're able to just move within a freeness. There's a free vibe that you're
I would
able to
agree.
just move in, just in the sense of, again, if you know you're moving with principles, morals, high characters and values, and you know you're moving righteously, it doesn't matter. You genuinely don't care because you know internally, I know I'm moving correctly. I know I'm moving righteously. I know I'm moving with sound perspective. So if somebody doesn't like me, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But on the contrary, if it's a yes, 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 I mean, it'll create maybe people who they could possibly be willing to manipulate the situation, or they can notice that and be like, oh yeah, I can tell he or she, they're gonna always say yes, so we'll ask him or we'll ask her. So it could very well lead to that, but it could also just create, from a self standpoint, you're just becoming stagnant because, I mean, just constantly wanting to heed to people all the time, it just doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't. And I think, and maybe not the complete opposite. I don't know if that would even be a thing, or like how I would, describe that in a simple, in simpler terms. But like, I think it definitely attracts the wrong crowd.
For sure.
I definitely can attract the wrong crowd on top of attracting maybe the people that you want to attract, but you're doing it in such the wrong form to where it's like, maybe you do get to the point to where you end up meeting some dude or, a woman or whatever, and it ends up being someone that you actually are really into, or you're really into that environment. But everything that you just talked about, I feel like was a lie.
Yeah.
So now it's trying to live by the lie, the rest of your life, or that however long this, term is going to be. And I feel like that's double the work.
A facade. Absolutely.
It's a facade. It's, it's, multiple personalities.
Yeah.
It's just multiple situations that you're trying to do and live out. And then you get to the point to where it's like, you get tired. You got to get burnt out at some point.
The burnout. Yeah.
And then it's up to now, not only you're taking the ball out of your court to where it's like, I'm not only not being genuine to myself, but like now I'm giving the person that maybe I wanted to be in their situation or wanted their environment to make the decision of like, dang, bro, do I really trust this dude to be himself?
Yeah.
Like when I really need him, is he going to be himself to be able to hold me accountable for the things that I'm doing?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big like line of fire right there that you're playing with. So
yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree. I think it's just about, again, we speak on it a lot, but just being intentional.
Yeah.
And once that happens, that really just weeds out a lot of things, truthfully.
For sure. So with people pleasing in the world of, let's say, you're running a social media channel, you're a bachelor dude just like trying to make his own way, early 20s. Like when it comes to relationships now, like we'll talk about relationships for a little bit. How do you move about that? Because we're in a day and age to where there's the ideal man, there's the, ideal guy that should be formed to a certain situation. I'm not saying for like all women, but like there's an ideal man for everyone. How do you still try to be your truest self when there's like these cutouts of people that you are trying to like fit in to certain boxes? You know what I'm saying? Like that. What would you say to that?
For sure. Well, I think, again, there are a few different things. I think one would be, and these are things that I do, truthfully.
Okay,
so I'm not just speaking from just from taking things from space. I think the biggest thing is just not really being on social media that much. Like for me, like what I'll literally do is like, I'll log off the app and I only have an Instagram. So I'll log off the app and then I'll delete the app off my phone. And I'll just be in real time.
That's right. I don't see you on Instagram right now.
Yeah, like I'll just be in real time. The only time I post it is for like, it's at random, travel, something else. Like, but like I just find like, and again, we come from a generation where we know how it feels to not have social media. Yeah. We know how it feels to be outside playing sports on our bikes, just being outside. So again, to get back to what you were saying, I think it's just not, because your subconscious, as you mentioned earlier, is going to be affected by that. It doesn't matter how, like, your subconscious is taking
it really is. No matter even if you're
in.
saying like, nah, bro, I'm gonna do it. It still does.
It's a receptor, so it's gonna receive it. I think also, and I think there are other ways it could be done. But I think looking towards men who you like, maybe like how they dress, you like how they carry themselves, and again, adding that to your palette. Not taking somebody's personality, not trying to be somebody. You can only be you. But you can see somebody, like I could see this fit and be like, man, I like this fit. What do I have in my closet that's similar to this? Or, man, I know I have a crop shirt like that. I could throw it on with some boots that I have, or you know what I mean? And I'm adding it to my palette.
You're rocking the style but not living the life.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm seeing something and I can get influenced by it, but I'm going to add it to who I am as a person, not saying, oh, I need to be Fobs. Yeah. I need to go get the ring. Like, because at that point, you can never do it like somebody else's. Like, you just can't. You have certain attributes. We could wear the same outfit. It's going to still come off differently because we have different personalities. We just genuinely are gifted with certain things, and you just have what you have. All three of us in this room have something that we have that makes us us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that can't be duplicated.
No, that's true.
You can't ever duplicate what you see. So you can see somebody and be like, I like that. I know he has a personality that's similar to mine or a style that's similar to mine. I'm going to take this and add it to my palette and move within it with who I am.
Yeah.
But I was influenced by it. That's fine. We should be influenced by our boys. We should be influenced by things that we like. But when you see something and you're like, I have to be that. Nah, that's not it. Because even if you wanted to, you can't.
That's a great point. I like the fact that you mentioned like the dressing up and like, you know, maybe having similar outfits. I think as kids and as, you know, as little boys when we were young, we always like, I'm going to be Kobe.
And that's fine.
And you would dress like that. And
absolutely,
then I think we would get into our, like our small little like mantras of like, you know, walking a little more cocky than outside of like what you are as a basketball player, as an athlete. So that's like the easiest example I can give. But I think that's true, man. Like I do think that there are ways to like imitate looks rather than imitating personality.
Can't do it.
And as much as like, oh man, I love this dude. Like he's just such a people people. He's just like such a, I don't know what's the word on it. A people person. There we go. He knows how to talk to people. And I think that can easily be misinterpreted to like, oh, he's a likable guy. So I got to be a likable guy. So I'm just going to agree with everything that he says. I'm going to go just do everything that he does. And I think that's the easiest way for people to think that like being a people, what's the word again?
People pleaser.
The other one. You just said it.
As far as
people person.
Okay,
there we go.
Okay,
there's so many peoples going on right now, bro.
Yeah.
So a people person, I think that's easy for people to really like get misunderstood for like people pleasing.
Absolutely.
And I agree, bro. There's funny thing is, you know, in high school I had a group of friends. There's 4 of us, and we all had completely different styles, like completely different. And it was cool because, you know, at the time when we were obviously all single, we attracted completely different women.
For sure.
And it was so cool because we never had that issue of like, hey, bro, like, you know, she's mine, or like, hey, how are we going to go about this? Or let's just not talk to her at all. Like we all had completely different types that we were into, and we all dated completely different women. And I think that's so interesting because to sum it down to like what we're talking about now, being your true self, there's not a lot of ways that you can attract the same person that your homie's attracting, or in this case, you know, whoever's attracting, if you're just being who you are. And I think it's the same for everyone. There's so many people out here, so many different things you could be into, not into, you know, you can pull from different areas and groups. And still, I feel like we get into this conversation, like I'm talking about, where there's these cookie cutouts of what men should look like. And I think guys just need to give themselves a break and be like, bro, I'm just going to be myself. If I like wearing boots on Monday and J's on another day, my homie over here, like wear your boots and I don't mean to throw them under the bus, but like I appreciate that because I appreciate it because you know how to step outside of the realm that you're necessarily comfortable being in and trying something else that you actually like. Absolutely. Like that's growth for me. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying?
Nah, man, I think it's just necessary. I mean, it seems cliche as far as just being yourself, but think about, you can't be somebody else, even if you want it. And I think that's when you see, whether it's friend groups and whomever, and you see people in friend groups try to emulate somebody else or do something, they're gonna always be trying to like catch on to that person, and you can't, because that person is just them. They're them, and you just, I don't want to say the word can't, because we can do anything, but in certain things you just can't. You can't be somebody else.
No, you can't. You can try. Yeah, exactly, for sure. You can try.
You're going to always be chasing, and then will that create jealousy, envy, spite, because now you're seeing them receive or be recipients of certain things that you might want. And they're just being them, and they're getting that from solely being them, which you could do. Not you, but just anybody in general could get just off just being themselves.
Absolutely.
So I think it's just ultimately about just seeing what you like in your influences, and then being like, okay, how do I take that and add that to me, to my palette? And then things will work out. But you can't look at something and be like, I want to be that. No. In totality, it's like, nah, it just doesn't pan out like that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, dude. So we've been talking a lot about, you know, people pleasing, and I think all in all, the conversation has been, you know, really important for the people that are sitting in that middle ground of like, who am I? And I think we're always going to have that question of like, who am I as a person? Who am I as, what's my purpose? And I think the easy way to really check yourself, like you said, is to really take that first self-evaluation of like, really, what do I stand for? And I think we all have to stand for something. Absolutely. And I think the easiest way to say this without throwing pressure on people, on men, is stand for something, and it doesn't have to be something that you got to stand for in 10 years from now. You know, do your due diligence of research, do your, you know, your thing of like following or practicing it, whether it's religion, whether it's, you know, a group that you're trying to get into, whatever it is, do your practice in it. And then if it's not for you, it's really not for you. You give it a try. But I think that's one thing that I urge men to do, because if it's not introduced to you at a young age, it can get really easy for you just to not do it at all. So I do think that's like one of those things where you got to take it upon yourself to be able to move that way, or else it's just not going to work out for you, you know, period. So we'll go ahead and move into the hot seat segment. It's been a while since I said that. So we got 5 questions, and we're going to have Julian answer them. Some of these questions are either on topic with people pleasing today, or there's something that we're going way off topic about, just to try to get more inside of like who Julian is as a person. And in this case, the same thing with me too. So yeah, man, we'll go ahead and get these, you know, rounded off. We have 5 questions today. And some of them tie into what we're talking about, and some of them are a little bit off topic. So for the first question, what's one thing you used to do to make people like you that you regret now?
I think leaning towards, you know, we both were athletes, former athletes, still athletic. But I think more so leaning towards the athletic side of life in regards to being able to get certain things. Yeah. I think when I think about it, I think a lot of athletes do. Yeah. I mean, you think about, you know what I mean? Like, we can lean towards whatever sport we play, whether it's with women or whomever, or for status, and you can lean towards whatever your capabilities are, or the sport that you play, or the team that you're on, to like receive something, or to like show an acumen of pleasing. Right. And I think that's something that, I mean, I think we probably all have done, which is fine, especially when you're young. You don't know what you're doing. You're just doing it. So just reflecting back off that question, I would probably lean towards that, because just holistically, and I think it's just a personality thing. I've kind of always had a personality to where it was like, I never cared what people thought about. There you go. I just, and again, that's a personality thing. So I think everybody's different in that sense. But even young, when I reflect back to being younger, that's not something that I thought about. Like, does she like me? Does he like me? Do they like how I am? I never thought about that. But specifically, I think leaning towards playing basketball and like leaning towards an athlete.
I can understand that for sure.
I think that.
So I could easily say that one too, but I'm going to go ahead and say leaning towards the fact that I would have people thinking I could speak Spanish. I think that was one of my insecurities growing up. Was
that's honest.
Yeah. That's like honest. I always had friends that could speak Spanish in this case, and I had a lot of family, cousins, you know, tios that all knew how to speak Spanish, and I felt kind of left out in this case. So people would ask me, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I speak Spanish. And it's just something that you say yes to, because again, it's like, one, you don't want to be the guy to say no because you don't really want to hear what they got to say. But two, it's more of like it used to hit a nerve for me, you know, back in the day. Like, man, I wish I knew how to speak Spanish.
Has
like
that ever happened? I didn't mean to
No, go for it.
Has that ever happened, and then somebody started to speak Spanish with you instantly, right then and there?
You know what? It
right
did.
After?
No, for sure it did. And I remember specifically, like, this was when I was probably early teens, and they would. And surprisingly, I knew what they were saying. Okay. And I would just speak to them in English, and so they knew, so it wasn't even that big of a deal. It was like at restaurants or just like. Somebody like when I was working in Maryville, they would come up to me, and a lot of the parents spoke Spanish, and just because I look different from a lot of our other coworkers, they just automatically was like, oh, brown person, Spanish. You speak Spanish. And I felt really bad because I was just like, dude, I should be able to speak Spanish, but I don't. So that would be mine, bro. Yeah, that was tough.
That's honest.
2, what's a time when being too nice backfired on you?
Ooh. That's a good question. I think, truthfully, all right, I'll say it in this sense, in a friend group sense. I think oftentimes we could be around people and they're operating in a certain space, and we're not. I don't want to use the word checking it, but we're not being like, hey, look, why are you doing that? Or I noticed you did this, and so you're just playing it cool. And I'll say this just to be specific. Let's say you have a boy, right? Yeah. Let's say you have a boy, and you know he doesn't really have a filter. Okay. And he just speaks whatever is on his mind when he's around you all. So it's like, all right, this is our boy. We know, like, he just says whatever, and we just, all right, cool. We play it nice or whatever it is. And then let's say you all get around other people, and then he still has that same filterless kind of like, characteristic that he's taken on, and he's operating like this around other people. And it's like, all right, we've been too cool with you just speaking like candidly and just saying anything and just being maybe crashed or whatever. around us, and then you get around other people, and you're still operating like this. They don't know you, so now they're taken aback. So we've been too nice about like not being like, hey, bro, like kind of like calm down.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, because now in his mind, he's just doing it everywhere.
For sure.
He's doing it everywhere. And so now it can create a space of like, yeah, maybe we need to like be honest with our boy in regards to like, yeah, like we know who you are, but when you act like this around other people, they don't know who you are.
No.
And now that creates secondhand embarrassment for us.
Paints a picture.
And now other people can be like, you all let him operate like
For
this,
sure.
or you all hang around him.
Group.
You know what I mean? You all hang around him. And I think that's I think we've all had experiences like that, maybe in different situations.
No, I understand what you're saying.
I think that's
we all got friends like that.
Yeah, exactly. To where it's like we know how our boy is.
Yeah.
Then he gets in another space and he's still operating like that, and it's like, bro, yeah, we're cool. We know you, but these people don't know you, and you're operating like this. Now they're looking at you crazy, and now they're also side eyeing us like, you all like hang with this, or you all approve of this, or why hasn't anybody said anything to him about this? I think that's to answer your question just quickly, I think that's something that I've experienced. I think a lot of us have, but something that I've noticed to where it's like, yeah, we might have needed to say something a little earlier to him, because now he's just taking
that's
us
real
everywhere.
Yeah, that's real, bro. No, that's real for sure. I can appreciate that. Hey, if you want to move around, you can. Like with your camera, you can, for sure. So yeah, no, I can respect that. So 2 for me, what's the time when being too nice backfired on you? It was in a relationship to where we were around family, and it was either a family friend or a relative, and they made, like you said, when you're around people, like people joke around about certain things. Yeah. And this specific person made a comment about, it was a joke about, like a racist joke. Oh, okay. And I didn't step up and say like, bro, that's not cool.
Sure. I see what you mean. Yeah.
And it's like you said, time and place for everything. Now, I don't think I will never stand on being racist towards anyone, to any, type of person whatsoever. Everyone tells the jokes, comedians make jokes all the time. Absolutely. So when that happened, it really caught me and threw me by surprise. No doubt, yeah. And I won't even take away the fact that like I was definitely in the people pleasing moment, because I just wanted to be nice about it and not say anything. Like I wasn't trying to start nothing. There was drinks involved, so I was like, I don't know if this is gonna turn into something deeper. For sure. I literally just like didn't say anything. Yeah. So after the fact, it was like a whole argument of like, really, you didn't step up and say it. And by all means, now I will say like, obviously, looking back, it's like, oh, for sure, like I was in the wrong for that. But in that moment, it was just like, I was being too nice. There's just certain things, regardless of what's going on. Like if you're in a public setting and you don't, and it comes down to like we talked about, reading a room. Like you got to read a room. You don't tell or talk certain, in certain ways, unless you're around people you really trust and grew up with. And it's the same thing. And who know you? Because we all know that you're not, your homie, your homie's not a bad person. He's just that guy. He's that guy.
That's exactly it.
So, I would say in that moment, for sure, I was definitely a people pleaser, because I just didn't want any conflict at that moment. So I could have definitely stepped up and done something.
For sure. That's an honest assessment.
Yeah, bro. Sure. 3, what's a hard lesson you learned about setting boundaries?
Well, I think ultimately, you have to be okay with knowing that everybody's not going to like you when you do that.
That's real.
And you have to almost, not saying you like that, but you have to know that like you're moving in a way that is acceptable, and that you resonates with you, and that they're just going to be people. Like, for example, there was a time I went into, like, it was an event, and I walked in. I was meeting some people, and I walked in, and I was basically trying to see. So I was scanning. I walked in. Yeah. And you go somewhere, you dress nicely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was dressed nicely. And I walked in and I stood. I was basically looking around because I was trying to see where my people were. Okay. And somebody walked up on me and was like, "You think you're better than people, don't you?"
No way. Just right off the jump?
Just ran. Like, I didn't know who she was.
Really?
I didn't know who she was. Yeah. She was like, she was like, "You think you're better than people, don't you?"
Dang.
And I looked at
her. What were you wearing? We got to know what we were wearing.
This was, I think I had, this was a while ago. Trying to think about what I had. I know I had on like glasses.
Oh, it's probably the glasses.
I had on like a long sleeve, but it was fitted. So like it was a fitted, it was a fitted long sleeve. I had on like jeans, they were distressed, and I had on Chelsea boots. So and I think it was like all black.
That's
so
it
was a very like, it might have been sunglasses too, something like that. I forget exactly, but I think it was around that realm. And when she said that, I looked at her and I said, "Thank you." I said, "Thank you," because I knew what she meant by that.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to, like, I haven't said anything. We haven't spoken.
Oh, so she's coming off of it in a positive.
No, in a negative way.
Oh, in a negative way. Okay.
She scammed me and was like, you think you're better than people, don't you?
Oh, wow.
And I looked at her and I smiled and I said, thank you. Because what you're saying is you see something to whereas you see somebody who has a certain disposition, a certain and you're basically saying you're putting a stigma on them because of something that's internally within you.
Yeah.
I haven't said anything to you. I don't know you.
Yeah.
You know, like there's been no discourse. There's been no conversation to even like insinuate or to like come up or draw a conclusion of this person thinks that they're better than somebody.
No, that's
now,
real.
I could understand if somebody had a conversation and they drew that conclusion just based off the conversation. I just walked into the room. So I said thank you because and it threw her off. And then I looked and I just walked off. But I was like, I know what you mean by that.
Yeah.
It's either you like what you see or you see something and you just want to put a stigma on somebody instead of being like, hey, I like that outfit. I like how you carry yourself.
Right.
I like, you know what I mean? I like your disposition. Not even to use the word aura because that's overly used now. But I just like your disposition. I like how you carry yourself.
No, that's crazy that you say that, dude. Yeah, it's got to be the glasses though.
I don't know what it was.
I think people have a hard time with people wearing glasses in public settings inside nowadays. Like, I think that's the thing that get people is, you know, I will say there's a certain time and place to wear sunglasses. Mm-hmm. I think in that, like the way you described your fit, I think that would have looked good. Like that's a good looking fit. But I do think there's just this weird thing about people that don't like people wearing sunglasses. Like it's like an entitlement thing.
I think I know what you mean for sure.
I don't know why.
I can't really.
But you're a good looking dude. You're in all black. You like, I think, you know, people, and it's funny that people talk about it like all black. People usually say like if you wear all black, you're not trying to be like stand outish. You're just trying to be like mixed in the crowd. But I feel like all black, bro.
It stands out.
I feel like that sounds clean.
It's very clean.
Very clean. Yeah. I feel like you stand out like, and then obviously you got your pump on, so like your fitted shirt and everything is looking good on you. It's like, bro, you're standing out like.
I think so
you're
too.
Shining for sure.
For sure.
And for her to make that comment, again, you got to be in a certain walk of your journey to be able to understand like, oh, thank you. Like that's a compliment to me. When in reality, you're trying to, you know, pass judgment of like whatever it is you're insecure about, you know, in this moment of a networking event or whatever it was for.
Now, I'm sorry. Were you gonna say
well, so what was a boundary that was? Because it was like, what's a hard lesson you learned about setting boundaries? Like, what was that lesson that you learned?
Well, in that and just in coordinates to what I was saying earlier in regards to that, I think for me personally, like is again when you know you're moving as yourself, like, you have to have, I'm gonna just be very, very frank about it. You have to have a nonchalantness, a nonchalantness. And that's a tongue twister, but be nonchalant about it. Honestly. You kind of have to have that like disposition of just being nonchalant and just having certain things happen and just being like subsiding disrespect. But anything that's that's not disrespectful and then it happens and you know you're moving just within who you are, you just notice it and you're like, yeah, all right, whatever. Like you have
it is.
That's what it has to be because again, if you know you're moving a certain way, if you're on your journey, if you're building yourself, if you're just aiming to operate a certain way and you're having certain things happen to you, you should know why it's happening.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know
No,
for
sure.
You're dressed nicely.
For sure.
And people are saying, and you haven't said anything. Just using that example again, and you haven't said anything, and somebody is trying to like downplay your fit or be like, why are you so fresh right now?
Yeah.
Hey man, I appreciate you noticing my outfit.
Yeah.
You know, you flip it on them because it's like, why did you have to say anything? Why are you saying anything?
No, you got to do it. It's the same thing when people just look at you. Like you ever walk in, people just like staring at you like, why are you here? In a way,
exactly.
You almost got to just be like, they're appreciating the fit. Like that's what they're doing.
And that's the way to combat anything else. Because what if I would have interacted in a verbal altercation with her, which I would never like.
Yeah.
That would be like, think about that. If I would have came back and be like, why did you say something? What's the need?
It goes back to the sports thing of like, you know, the first person to throw the punch is never the one that gets caught. It's like the second person to engage in that type of environment or in that action is for sure going to take the most amount of loss in that situation. So, bro, I don't ever see you doing that, but I think I think it would be normal for the people pleaser to really downplay the fit and be like, you know what? Yeah, I shouldn't have worn this. Like I was kind of skeptical about it, because there are people that will do that, bro. They will play themselves down, and it goes back to that whole quote of what we talk about every single time when it comes to Coach Carter, of that like, you know, we are in fear, again, back to people pleasing. We are in fear of being our truest self and being successful and going after a higher standard. Because you know, when you're seen, you know, when you're seen, your standard and expectation goes up, and now you got people actually watching you. And that's what the scary part is. The scary part isn't success, which I think people are like always wondering, because I used to be the same way of like, why would I be scared of success? That don't make no sense to me. Like that's the dumbest quote ever. But it's the reality of where success comes from is now you're on a now you're on a level.
It's a standard.
Yeah, now you're on the standard, and you're on the
very
wall.
true.
And if you go down that wall, everyone's gonna know.
Stuff happens.
And people don't like to fail.
That's very true. And I've even told people, like, you know, you'll hear people do something and they'll be like, oh, I was dumb for that, or that was dumb with me. And I've told people, like, don't do that.
Oh, really?
Like, don't do that, because that's self-deprecating.
Yeah.
Like, don't. Even earlier when you were like, I'm getting, like you said something like, I'm not young anymore. Bro, you're still super young. I tell people all the time, like, when you're around me, I don't care if you're 80.
Yeah.
You want to be youthful. We want to retain our youthful. I'll never be like, I'm getting up out the chair. I'm old. No, I'm not. I don't feel like it. We're supposed to look better as we get older. We're supposed to gain more wisdom.
Yeah.
I'll never say that, because your body can only react to what you say.
No,
so if you say you're getting old and you start getting up and your knees start cracking, you told your body you're old.
That's serious. Yeah, that's
We
real.
in the gym all the time. Why would I say I'm old? We're somewhere that actually is the fountain of youth to retain our youthfulness. Why would I be somewhere where I'm trying to retain my youthfulness, but also speaking verbiage of saying I'm old or I'm getting old? Of course we're going to get old. We're living.
Yeah.
So that's inevitable. We're going to age, but I'm not going to feel old and be old and look old. I'm going to retain my youthfulness forever.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Forever. So even when I hear people say, like, I'm getting old, don't say that around me. Don't say that around me.
Don't be saying you're old around
That's a
Jillian,
playful
man.
way. But I also,
For
when
sure.
people are like, man, this might be a stupid question. Why are you saying that?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, when people say that, like, whether we're in work meetings and things, I often think, like, why did you lead with that? There's no such thing as this. You had a question. Excuse me, I have a question. Why are you leading with the sentiment of this might be a stupid question, but why is self-deprecation involved? To try, like, so what if everybody knew it and you didn't? I'll be, hey, look, I don't know what this is. Can you explain this? I don't care. It's not my task for anybody me to think, what is it? What are these people going to think about me because I asked this question? I don't care. I have a question. I'm not going to lead with this might be a stupid question. No, it's not. I need to know the answer.
For sure, bro.
Can't be stupid.
No,
I need this.
That's a good point, and I want listeners to really understand that, like, the whole thing of, like, you know, making sure that you're able to be in that mindset, because it happens time and time again.
People
and I think
do it all the time.
And I think once it comes down, and it does happen with, you know, the confidence too, of like, hey, making sure that I'm in a confident state to be able to say, hey, I have a question, rather than, hey, I'm talking like this, whereas I should be talking like this.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You know, chest out, proud.
Yeah.
So that's a great point. That's a great point. Sorry we got off on a tangent right there. That was a question.
That can happen.
We got 2 more questions to get through, which I still need to answer. What's a hard lesson you learned about setting boundaries? And we've talked about this time and time again. When you set boundaries, people will leave.
For sure.
And I think, you know, abandonment, regardless if you come from it, you're born into it, or you face it later in life, it still hurts. Absolutely. You know, maybe at a different, you know, a different level or climate.
Sure. Agreed.
But setting boundaries really taught me that, you know, the people that you really thought were going to be there weren't going to be there. And it's something that you just got to accept. You know, you know, have your moments. You know, have your sides to where, you know, you're sad about it. You know, engage in those emotions, but don't live in it. But I would say, you know, setting boundaries really taught me on who I am as a person and the things that I was involved in that time of my life with those certain people or situations or even jobs, really. And it comes back to a deeper understanding to where it's like, it's not about what I want. You know, it's about what's part of my plan and my walk with what, you know, God has for me. And I think, you know, leaning on faith has been so huge for myself and for anyone that is, you know, really big into their faith, because you don't got to ask why, knowing that it's not going to be answered at some certain point in your life. For sure. So that was the one for me for sure, dude.
Absolutely.
All right. So what's one habit you've developed to stop people pleasing? You've given so many, but like if there's one specific that you think would be like huge for people, or in this case, men, what would you say?
And again, I'll heed to this book again. It's called the Courage to Be Disliked. And I know I keep reiterating it, but
No, you're good.
It's
You're good.
powerful. Like when I was reading this book, I was underlining, writing.
Oh, I love
but
that.
again, I think all of us in this room, anybody that's watching this, like when we think about task, it's not our individual task to worry about what anybody thinks about us. When we constantly reiterate that in our minds, when we're just walking throughout life and operating in who we are, it's not your task to try to figure out why somebody doesn't like your outfit, or why somebody doesn't like your personality, or you switched your look up. It's not for you to think about that. It's for you to be like, this is what I want for myself. I'm presenting this, and that's it. That's it. I think when we move with that, that alleviates anything else in regards to people pleasing, trying to figure out and have, because somebody's living in your brain rent free at that point, or people are.
Yeah.
When that's the case.
Oh, absolutely.
So alleviate that to just to always remember task. It's not your task to try to figure out why people don't like you, why somebody doesn't like your style. They don't like the music that you listen to. You present yourself as a genuine person, and that's all.
That's the ones that stick.
And those would be the ones that are supposed to be in your life.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything you do in your life.
Yeah.
So what's one habit you've developed to stop people pleasing? I would say, and this one's just a big one for me that I would, keep harping on people, is to know who you are as a person. Like, really know who you are as a person. And, that's going to change from the time you're 20 till the time you're 30, to the time you're 30 to you're 40.
Yeah.
And I think the more that you can really understand, and not only the things that you like and you dislike, but really, what do you enjoy doing, when it's not coming to, oh, well, if I have a group of people around, this is what I like to do. Or if my family's around. No. What do you like to do? Because back to the whole people pleasing, it doesn't matter if there are certain things that you are trying to do to be a service man. And I think that was the whole point that we didn't get to talk to today, but we'll talk about it later, is being of service does not mean the same thing as people pleasing. Being of service is completely different to where it's following the purpose that you live upon.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have a purpose, you're not being of service to anything. You know what I mean? Like your foundation is completely ruined.
Absolutely.
But if you're in the mindset of like really knowing what you enjoy doing, then you can start building that philosophy of that purpose and really engage into that service. And I would say with anything, if there's a service that you enjoy doing and it really makes you feel good, go after it.
Absolutely.
Because not only is it selfish to do that, but the selfless is when it comes to somebody that you can actually help, whether it's a friend, girlfriend, wife, somebody just off the side of the street, and you offer that to them. Yeah. Oh man, that the people pleasing comes out. It's taken out of the way, because all you're working off of is your purpose and being a service man.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I agree.
All right. So last one, not least, we made it this far. Julian, give me 2 things that you're most proud of in your life right now.
For sure. Those are good questions, man. I think one, just living in a different city across country from where I'm from. Like, that's not something that I take lightly.
You know what? That's a good point.
Sense,
Yeah.
Anybody,
I don't think we've talked about it.
us,
Why don't you share where you're from? Yeah.
Chicago. I'm from the south side of Chicago. And I think just all of us, we're from different environments, and we're living in a new city. That's not something that we should take lightly, because literally, if you're living somewhere else, it's either one or two things. Either you make it or you don't.
That's true, dude.
It's no middle ground. I mean, some people figure things out. They might stay with the friend, but how long can you do that for? So if you stay somewhere for a substantial amount of time, you're adulting. And yeah, we're all adults, but you're thriving, truthfully. And we're going to all go through things. So we can't look at it from the standpoint of somebody who has millions, or like, no, you're making it. Like, you're making it. And that's not something that's light, because I know a plethora of people that life has happened, and what happened? They go back to where it's comfortable.
Yeah, they got to go back home.
Where you could have persevered. They could have persevered, but it's easier to go where it's comfortable. We've all been through things. So it's like, I mean, I'm pretty sure I've been here going on 5 years. We've all been through certain stuff. That's amazing. But it's like, what's the mindset of, it has to be a certain mindset of, I'm here, I want to be here, I'm going to stay here.
Yeah.
That's just the mindset. So I say that because I could go off on a tangent with that. Sure. But I think being somewhere else, being in a new city, and then also something that I'm proud of, I'll say, like, I've been doing some traveling, and I think just my mindset has just shifted a lot, truthfully. Like, I'm proud of, like, just my mindset, just and growth and evolution and elevation, just in a sense of, I was just talking to one of my boys about this. bro, I don't really watch sports anymore, man.
Okay, yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I think we talked about that.
Like, yeah, we've spoken about it as well. Like, and I love basketball. Like,
Yeah.
I always love basketball. But now, truthfully, like, where I'm at with it, like, I genuinely really only watch like Animal Planet and travel vlogs.
Animal Planet's crazy, bro.
Yeah, yeah. But it's from the mindset of now, like, man, it's just so much more in this world.
Yeah,
And when you experience and you have access and you see it, it should, but it should shift how you think.
Yeah.
And I'm just in a space now to where it's like the world is there's so much to see in this world, and I'm just thankful for like my mindset just having a forward mindset of just knowing there's so much more and wanting to achieve that. So those are two things that have really been resonating with me.
I love that, dude. Yeah, that's great. I that's what I know you by is just joining the guy who travels.
No,
And
love, man.
I think it's cool.
Love,
I think
love,
I
bro.
appreciate that all the time when I do talk to people and they're like ask about you, and I'm just like, bro, this dude just travels like
Appreciate you,
up
bro.
and gets out and just goes and
We're supposed to be
experiences
nomadic,
life.
bro.
Yeah.
We're nomadic. We're nomadic people. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, definitely.
people who came here weren't all necessarily. There were people that were here, then there were people that came here. We're all like, none of us were both. This is a melting pot. So how did people get here?
Yeah.
From being nomadic. You know what I mean? People come from different countries here. People come from here and go to different countries. Where does that urge come from?
No,
Like
definitely,
that,
dude.
So we're nomadic people.
No, you're
man.
spot
We're
on.
supposed to.
You're spot on with
Yeah.
that. And that's cool. I love that. And that's why I always say, like, I can appreciate the
Appreciate
fact
it,
that
man.
you
Thank
experience life like that
you.
because I mean, a lot of people can do it. It's tough
Yeah.
nowadays, you know,
Yeah.
especially in the times we're in right now. Like, it's just tough to even go out and buy eggs. Like,
you're
it's
right,
tough for
man.
some people,
No,
and
for sure.
it's
That's
a
real.
blessing for sure to be able to travel at all.
For sure.
So I will say that, yeah, I can appreciate that for sure. I would say I would say the two most things I'm proud of, or the two things I'm most proud of in this instance would be, I'm proud of the fact that I almost in the last 5 years that I've lived here, you know, piggybacking off the fact that we both came from, you know, different cities. I feel like every year I've elevated in certain ways.
That's a blessing.
And that's a huge blessing for me.
Yeah,
and
it's a
I'm
blessing, bro.
you know, confident. I feel
Congratulations.
like I'm at my most confidence in saying that right now
For
than
sure.
the last 4 years. But most importantly, you know, understanding that blessing, but like, you know, regardless of the things that I failed at and I'm still learning to do in each year, I feel like I'm constantly evolving in other areas to be able to balance that out in a perfect, you know, high and low type environment. So, regardless of it's just like this new place, like obviously you guys see this a new setting for us right now. Like, this is the nicest place I've ever lived in. And I was telling my pops that
very
this
small
past
spot.
weekend, man, and I was like, thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And we were just sitting out on the patio, and I'm like, I live here. Like, this is amazing. Like, you know, this is something that I've always dreamed of getting for myself. And the fact that I'm actually to do this and live in it, you know, it has come from hard work and dedication. Like, you know, you say you working 2 jobs. Like, bro, I was working 2 jobs. You know, I was doing the most. I was working 3 jobs when I was back home. So, like, looking at the journey as a whole, I think that's what I'm so proud of when it comes to, like, how I was raised, you know, what's God provided in my life, and just seeing how, you know, powerful he is. Like, I give it all to him and my family, because that's where it comes from. And then the second thing I would say is, Liberty commercials, no paid advertising. The second thing I would say is the friendships, man. Like,
Sure.
I am so proud and blessed to have people in my life right now that I didn't have a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Like, for you to be sitting right here, like, with me, like, no joke aside, bro, like, nothing corny. Like, I appreciate our friendship.
Love,
like,
I mean that.
you're a brother now, for
Thank you.
sure.
Likewise.
You know, we got another homie in here who, you know, is working the camera, and he's another good dude. Like, there's nobody in my life that is not a good person right now.
Sure, that's how it's supposed to be.
And like, everyone that I truly hang out with, you know, on time to time, or just text or reach out to, like, they are good, genuine people. And I'm like happy and blessed to be able to have that in my life, bro, because I've always wanted that. You know what I mean? Like, I've always wanted a good foundation of people that had good morals, that had good values, and that wanted something in life. And it just so happened that, like you mentioned, they moved from a different city, and we were just growing here. So it's a blessing for sure, bro. So that's what I want to end on, for sure.
That's good to hear, man.